preview this final parliamentary sitting week with Kerry Chikarovski and Bruce Hawker. Kerry, first to you, the last sitting week of the year. Some are saying of the term. How do you see things now politically as we wrap up 2024?
I think it's been a year of ups and downs for both sides, really. I think that the Prime Minister will be probably looking forward to a break and giving himself some time to concentrate on trying to get back on message. I mean, there's been a lot of distraction for the Labor Party in the last 12 months, things which really didn't need to become issues. I mean, who knew that we would be talking for a week about the Prime Minister buying a holiday home? I mean, things like that have just been ridiculously hard for the PM to keep on message. The bigger issue, I think, for the Labor Party, though, is that the economy is not improving in the way they would have hoped at the beginning of the year. So for the Liberal Party, I think that's obviously been an opportunity. They've been talking about issues which seem to be gaining traction. For example, the discussion around nuclear. Anybody had said to me 14 months ago or 2 years ago that people in Australia would be willing to talk about nuclear, I would have said, you're dreaming. But now that seems to be gaining traction. So it seems as if the Liberal Party are very focused. They're sticking to message. I think the Labor Party going into the break will be taking that as a lesson and working out what their message is between now and the next election.
Yes, indeed, Bruce. It is going to be an important few months ahead. Either March, April or May is when the election will be. It's not far away, Bruce.
It's not. And I think the last week of the sittings is going to be interesting. We've seen the Greens and the Dutton opposition getting involved in what I think is a bit of an unholy alliance to try to block and effectively block important cost of living measures that the government's trying to put through, particularly housing, and also to some extent the plans around reducing the number of visas for overseas students. So I think the opposition has actually given Labor an opportunity to focus on cost of living issues and say, well, they talk a big game, but when the rubber hits the ground, they sit down with the Greens and decide that they're going to block legislation which would allow people to borrow money more easily to buy homes, to get more rental assistance, and to reduce the number of students coming in from overseas so that more housing's available for people who need to rent. I think they're all very powerful messages for the government, and I don't really understand why the opposition has seen fit to go down this path.
When you say it's a powerful message, Bruce, tell me, how does it work politically with voters? Because don't voters just say, you can't get this done, you're the government, it's your fault?
Well, that's certainly what Dutton's hoping, and of course that's a very cynical way in which to pursue your politics. The Labor Party has to actually explain to people constantly that there were measures put in place by Labor, introduced into the Parliament and rejected by an unholy alliance between the Greens from the left and the Liberal Party and the coalition from the right. They've got to keep repeating. That's the message of politics. Keep talking about it until it actually gets in. Stay on message and make sure it's all about cost of living. Because when you start getting diverted into other issues, you're not talking about issues that people are concerned about. And that's the important thing for the government. If interest rates come down before May or whenever, then of course that will give them a very good platform to say, well, we stayed the course and this is the benefit you're getting from it. But that's very much in the gift of the Reserve Bank, who seems to take a lot of time taking advice from economists within its ranks, but not going out onto the street or into the houses of people around the country and ask them how they're doing, because interest rates are still so high, and that's within the gift of the Reserve Bank to reduce them.
Kerry, the opposition leader's done, I think, a really successful job in getting his side to be unified and to be competitive. And if you'd said to a coalition member, this is where we'll be after 2.5 years, they would have snapped at the chance. They're in the mix for the next election. Many had written them off after the last election under Scott Morrison, but Peter Dutton's got them back into the hunt. As someone who's been through, the eye of the storm as an opposition leader, he's facing something soon though that he hasn't experienced before: the intensity, the ferocity of that sort of campaign.
Yes, but he's had a lot of experience now. He's actually had that 2.5 years to be discussing issues, to be facing down the media when he does, when he does things that they don't like. So I don't think you're going to see an inexperienced opposition leader in a campaign. He's actually very experienced, both as a minister and now having had, 2.5 years, as you say, under his belt as opposition leader. So I'm not concerned about that at all. I think he will stand up to that campaign exceptionally well. I'd just like to make a quick comment, though, on what Bruce said, because, look, the problem with what Bruce said was that he had to take a fair bit of time to explain it. And I think that's going to be the issue for the Labor Party when they're trying to explain, as he calls it, the unholy alliance. The issue that people are still talking about and will continue to talk about is cost of living. And the thing they most see as impacting cost of living are interest rates and electricity prices. And to be fair, they're the two things which the opposition has been concentrating on. They keep on talking about how we can have nuclear to bring down electricity prices. They keep on talking about the need for us to reduce the size of government so that we can reduce inflation, so that we can reduce the interest rates. Absolutely accept Bruce's point that it's the RBA that makes those decisions, but at the end of the day, it's the government that wears the opprobrium for not being able to get it done, for not putting in place the things which the RBA thinks are important in order for them to start to reduce interest rates.
Yeah, that's going to be the challenge. Bruce, only got about 30 seconds left.
Well, it's very easy to explain. We, as a Labor government, introduced legislation to make it easier for you, the people, to get housing loans, to get benefits from the and rent in the rental market, and to reduce the number of people coming into the country. They were all rejected by the opposition and the Greens working together. You can say it in one sentence, and it's a pretty compelling argument, and they've just got to keep doing it time and again. They've got to keep doing it time and again.
But Bruce, the problem is people can't afford a housing loan. So it's all well and good to say that we're, doing things. They can't actually get into the market for a housing loan. They're talking about rental. If you talk about rents, there's not the properties to rent. So I think it's all those things which actually make it more difficult for the government.
They're talking about 2% loans. That was what was being knocked back. Loans that were being repaid at that level. So, in return for some equity by the government, very sensible measures which would make it accessible for people to gain access to housing. They're the things you've got to have those discussions. You've got to have those debates, and we've got to explain to people why they should be getting those benefits and they're not getting them.
Bruce, Kerry, see you next week.